Awesome. So welcome everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Public and Legislative Affairs Committee of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is August 25th, 2025, and we're meeting in a virtual format here in Zoom. I like for people to introduce themselves, so I can start. My name is Sarah Lentz. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm chair of the board and chair of this committee, and a mom to an Ocean Avenuer. And I'll pass it to Ryan, and then you can pass it to someone else, please, Superintendent.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Ryan Scallon, Superintendent. I will pass it to Jane.
Jane Sawtell, school board member, school board candidate.
And I'm going to pass on your behalf. No, go ahead.
Grace.
Oh, Grace, you're muted.
I still don't know how to do it. Grace Valenzuela, Executive Director for Family and Community Engagement for the Portland Public Schools. Good evening.
And Board Member Ali.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali, District 2, school board member. I'm glad to be here. Other work that I do, I work currently for DHHS. I run businesses currently, well, my personal business starting it, and I worked for many organizations in the past, so.
Beautiful. Well, glad that we are all here tonight. Let's see if we have anybody for public comment. It does not look so. I know August is a tough time for people to commit to public comment, and we're just getting going. So just a reminder, that is not something that we are required to do, but do it to make sure that we are offering time for extra community voice and input. So please feel free, if you're watching the recording, to come to any meeting. Henceforth, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but the meetings in the coming year to give public comment at committee meetings, we welcome that. Oh, and could someone move Board Member Noor over? She's just arrived in the attendees side. Beautiful, thank you for that. And so Superintendent Scallon, would you mind putting up the PowerPoint for tonight? And we'll just kind of go through the topics that we've got for tonight. Great. So these are our topics for tonight, to look again at those priorities that we updated since our last meeting and the proposed calendar. There's a lot in the calendar that isn't scheduled, but we'll get there and talk about why in a bit. Looking at what community engagement looks like over the course of this year. We've got some dates nailed down, some thinking behind it. So we'll look at that. Then each committee is looking at kind of what policies might be relevant to their work and do they need to be updated at all. So we'll look at a group of policies together and see kind of if we think that we need to do any work on those. I'm going to take the legislative tracker off the agenda for tonight just because I have not had a chance to move that as far along as I wanted to, but we can just check in about what that might look like moving forward. And so with that, we can go to the next slide, Superintendent. Great. So from the feedback that we took at the last meeting, this is a draft of our final priorities for this committee. And just a reminder, like if something comes up in November and we need to change these, we can certainly do that then. But basically, this just gives us a roadmap for both the staff and the members of this committee to have at the start of this year. But by no means is it totally binding and not changeable as we move through the year. I think that this committee will definitely definitely be one of the responsive committees, just given all the legislation that we'll likely see within this year. So we can always adjust this. But thinking about the two areas of our committee, so for public engagement, increasing the number of community members engaging in the fall and spring community engagement opportunities, and increasing the presence and reach of district social media. Those were two that were added at the last meeting. And then looking at legislative engagement. So develop deeper relationships with city, state, and federal representatives, engaging in conversations that impact the district. Deeper understanding of the legislative process in Maine, develop a relationship with the MSMA policy work, continue to follow and give feedback for the EPS formula work, and develop a communication plan for informing our community on advocacy issues. So that is where we landed after our last meeting. And so at this point, I'd be looking for any questions from board members or comments. We will take a vote on this tonight to see, to just set it in stone. But again, it's a soft stone, so we can change it if we need to. But I'd be looking for any questions or thoughts from committee members at this point. Okay, I don't see any hands. One thing I think might, Dr. Valenzuela, I think that you mentioned this last time, but you have kept track historically of how many people come to the community meetings.
For the constituency coffees, are you talking about that? So
Or just like, in the, anytime we're having a community engagement meeting, how many folks are there?
So it really depends on topics, hot
Okay.
topics like the cell phone policy shift that yielded a lot of more number of people than usual. So maybe about 30 to 50 people depending on the day and the platform that we use. But if it's not a controversial topic, you probably get 10 as the 10 to 20.
Perfect. So I'm just wondering, I see this now and I didn't bring it up before now, but increasing the number of community members, I'm worried about that being a goal of ours if we don't have a baseline kind of, so I'm just wondering if maybe the goal should shift slightly to, create a tracking system for attendance and monitor with the goal of hoping to increase over time.
That sounds good to me.
Other board members? Okay, I see I see some thumbs up, which is helpful. Ali, are you okay with potentially shifting that first one to be development of a system to track engagement?
Yeah, 100% good.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, yeah. Live changes. Track and report. Can we say track and report? Participation. Awesome. And then can we just, sorry, I know you just took that down. Can we add a second part that's like with the intention of growing engagement? Perfect. Thank you. So we can put that back up, which I think is what you're doing right now. Perfect. So then I would make a motion to move these committee priorities forward to be our final set of priorities for the year. And I'd be looking for a second. Thank you, Board Member Noor. Are there any questions from the board here?
None.
Nice. Okay, thank you. And any public comment? I see no attendees, so I will not open public comment. Is there any discussion from the board at this point? Okay, then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you're in favor of making these committee priorities as outlined on this slide, the priorities for this 2025 school year. So I'm just going to go from the bottom of my screen up. So Board Member Noor,
Yes.
Board Member Ali,
Yes.
Board Member Sawtell,
Yes.
and Board Member Lentz, yes. So that motion passes. So we've got our priorities set for the year. Awesome. So this is the calendar that we looked at the last time. I don't believe that there's been any updates since then. I am in conversation with someone from the MSMA about potentially coming to educate us on the legislature. In September, so understanding how the sessions work. So there are legislative sessions that take place, and they start in December and then January, and also in addition how their committee structure works, the ways that it's easiest for us to be engaged, and the ways that we might be able to have the biggest impact with that. So hopefully I can get that scheduled before our next meeting, and then we can kind of like shift things around based on kind of like when that person is able to come. So any questions about this calendar or anything that needs to be added or subtracted?
Chair Lentz,
Okay.
the one thing that was, just for transparency's sake, adjusted
Appreciate that. Yep.
was in October, added the goal of getting a legislative lobbyist to come talk to the group. That may be duplicative, it may be additive to what you just shared about MSMA. So
Great.
we can sort of play that by ear.
Great. Perfect. Anything else from anyone? Okay, and I will just add that, you know, I typically join, and sometimes Superintendent Scallon joins the city's legislative meeting, which happens usually on Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock. When they get going, they happen every week, but right now they're not happening. But whenever those meetings start to get established, I'll just make sure to remind folks, because if you wanted to join those, that's helpful, but not obligatory. Okay, so this will be our calendar that we're working off over the course of the year. And with that, I think we can go to the next slide. And Superintendent Scallon, I'm going to have you take over these next few slides, because I think it's more about the work that the staff has been doing since the last time we met.
Yes, happy to. So with this committee, right, it has two sides. It has a public engagement or public affairs, and then a legislative affairs. And this committee did work last year to start to think about what that community engagement looks like. And tonight we're going to sort of give an update on where things are, as well as get feedback from you. This graphic is just designed to show at a high level the different components that go into any engagement, as well as how alignment, control, and resources shift. And so at its core, all of our messaging should be aligned around the strategic plan and the big buckets of work that the district is doing. The closer we get to the center, the more alignment we're going to have with any of these strategies, the more control we have as individuals and as a body, and usually more resources, whether it's time or staffing or money that go towards them to make them happen. And so just as you're thinking about it, we'd love to have face-to-face as our biggest way of community engagement. It is usually the most aligned, but it also takes the most resources to do on a regular basis. And so we can't have our whole engagement plan be based around face-to-face. We also know that social media is a way where a lot of families and our community members engage in our work and see what's happening. And things that we post to social media right? We control that initial message, and then it spreads out, and others add to it. We can also think about others' events and messaging. One example of that is that we typically have staff and board members attend the city's counselor district meetings that happen in the fall, and then going as far out as word of mouth and just how people talk about the work in the district. And so I want to share some of the key pieces that are already sort of worked on and being planned for around community engagement, and go from, in some cases, most labor intensive to others. So the first is around district-wide engagement, and this is board led. So these are community meetings in October and March. And right now they're scheduled for October 15th, 16th, 29th, and 30th, and March 11th, 12th, 25th, and 26th. The calendar holds on these are for 3 meetings in person, 2 at schools, 1 at a community partner, and 1 virtual each of these months. The draft topics in October are attendance boundaries, progressive discipline, cell phones, and school safety. And March focusing on potential implementation of changes to attendance boundaries and the budget. And the hope is that attendees include board members, myself and relevant staff, families, and community members. So that is at its biggest and most labor intensive. The next that we have talked about and are inviting board members to is targeted towards staff engagement. So each Wednesday in September and October, and then in December and January during staff professional development sessions on Wednesdays, we will have a schedule where we will be joining, not for the whole 1:30 to 4 time, but for 20 to 30 minutes to get feedback from staff around the implementation of cell phones, progressive discipline, budget, and others identified by staff. Again, board members are invited to attend. I will be there, and school staff is relevant. Yeah, Jane.
Is that virtual, or are you going to various schools, or what?
Yeah. This will look similar to what you would have experienced last year, or staff experienced last year with the budget conversations, where we went to each school over the months of December, January, and I think we had 1 or 2 carry over into February. And this year we're going to do it in both the fall and the spring, not to take up a whole hour, but just to hear feedback from staff. And so it'll be in person at each of the schools, and we can put out a schedule for board members to share where and if they want to join. But just an opportunity to get that staff feedback. And as we experience in the budget conversations, is every staff and every school has its own unique sort of circumstances and flavor, if you will. And so the feedback varies quite significantly. So it's not like you can sample 3 schools and you have the trends for all. We also want to dig in and build on the work that the board did last year around parent engagement and around student engagement. And so the goal is that at each school, 1 PTO meeting in the fall and 1 PTO meeting in the spring. And then partnering with 2 of our community partners, one in the fall and in the spring, to be out in the community and to engage. Again, we anticipate topics will be cell phones, attendance boundaries, progressive discipline, budget, and others identified by parents. We want to do those 2 groups, PTO and community partners, as they are usually not the same participants. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing as much of a diverse perspective as we can. And then for student engagement this past year, we had meetings at each of the middle schools and high schools. Based on feedback from board members and open to feedback on this, we were proposing to do and focus on high schools this year. 1 in the fall, 1 in the spring. And again, invite board members, relevant staff to those conversations. I also just want to name that what's not included here, but also happens. So we will have the city council district meetings. Those are actually usually hosted at our schools and happen in the October, November typical window. We also have time for board and community engagement in our biweekly board and committee meetings. Grace and her team leads a lot of this work, but also deep dives in Parent University on really targeted topics. We're working to increase our social media presence. And then there's a whole lot of work that actually happens at each of our schools around parent engagement and parent feedback. And so wanted to share each of these and see if there are any questions from board members or feedback.
Superintendent, could we go back to the first in this series after the graphic? And we can just ask folks. Yeah, perfect. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on this, the district-wide engagement set of meetings? Yeah, Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Sorry, dumb question.
No, not at all.
What attendance boundaries? What does that mean?
No, that's a great question. And also there are no dumb questions because we just, get into habits and we don't explain things. And so every time you ask a question like that, it helps people understand what we're talking about. So please continue to do them. And that goes to everybody. Attendance boundaries, that is the silly name for the committee that is looking at the boundaries across elementary and middle schools. So they are this week, hopefully getting to a final set of boundaries that they'll be taking to the public for feedback. So anytime you see attendance boundaries or boundaries committee, that is what that's referring to.
When that's put out to the public, I assumed it meant attendance, like showing up to school. So
yes,
I think people are super interested in the boundaries. So I hope it's really clear.
And we did. Yes, there just like isn't a good word to describe it, and so technically the boundaries of a school is called their attendance boundaries, and so that's what we ended up saying on. But I agree. I think it is a little bit confusing, but it is kind of what it is right now.
Right, and then for progressive discipline, we were just discussed. Right?
Yeah, so just a note to Superintendent Scallon and Dr. Valenzuela, just making sure that we're in alignment with the, what did they call it? The behavior response protocols.
Yes, that's exactly it. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, so just wherever we have progressive discipline, if we can update that, that would be great. And I was just curious how we will decide on which community partner we use for those meetings. And I think it's a great idea to have one at a community partner place and two at schools. I think that's great.
I mean, I think we're open to board input on that. Dr. Valenzuela, I don't know if you have thoughts on partners that typically help get an audience that you would recommend as well. Grace, you're muted.
I think we can expand this year because we have to really, we were limited at, when we were doing this before, but I think there are a lot of opportunities to do it differently with community partners. So we have to, I have some ideas on who that would also be in a catchment area where people can walk to it is one option. Like I can think of Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, Root Cellar. Those are places where there are that are a little bit more accessible for some people. So those are the initially, and I think that it will not be a bad idea to hold one as well in a Portland Housing Authority.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe even at the next meeting, we could spend a little bit of time on that, like just like finalizing a list of places, if that works for you, Dr. Valenzuela.
Sure, yes.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on this slide before we go to the next one?
Can I just ask a question about the topics? So are we saying that on these dates, 15, 16, 29, and 30th, we are going to talk about one topic only? Like, for instance, on the 15th, you're doing cell phone, the 16th, you're doing progressive discipline, or are they going to be all at this, all topics and repeated for those 4 days?
Yeah, I see them as that there would be like a 20-minute presentation at the top of the meeting that would cover the basics of all of these areas. And then we could take questions about that and then, you know, whatever else is on people's mind. And then I just had one other question before we move on, which is just how indicating where there will be interpreters. I didn't know if we wanted to do one that is purely for multilingual families, or how you're thinking about that, Dr. Valenzuela.
I have to, because we have to shift our parent-teacher conferences, and those are scheduled already. So I have to think about what date will be good to do a specific one for multilingual families. It will
Okay.
be easier for us so that then we have available interpreters rather than be spread out, because that's also the time that we're doing conferences, both of these months.
And no, I would prefer it that way also, just because we can, you know, pace it differently and really tailor the information. Do you see that? So there will be an additional date added in this fall and the spring for that, is that right?
If these dates won't work because they're already taken, I think we should add a different date that would work for interpreters.
Beautiful. Any feedback on that from the board or the committee members?
I have one
Yeah.
piece, which is my suggestion would be that perhaps we double up a day instead of adding a 5th day. Just thinking we already have the Wednesday and Thursday of that week. Earlier is board meeting on Monday and Tuesday, and Friday is just not a day to try to gather folks. And so I could picture a 6 and a 7 o'clock kind of piece as a way of getting at it.
Great. Or yeah, concurrently, either way, but just making sure that the dates work to have interpreters. Awesome. So those are the notes on that slide. I think we can move forward to the next one. For the staff engagement, are there any questions from committee members here or thoughts?
Nope. I'm only saying no because I know it gets annoying that nobody says anything or.
No, I appreciate it also because I can't see your face, so which I totally understand, but it helps with the feedback, so I appreciate that. Okay, then.
Oh, someone's going to email us like we're going to be at Reiki school, whatever. We're going to get that schedule.
Yes, so Kate will actually work with school leaders to identify the slot, and then we'll share it with board members to sign up if available and interested, with the expectation being that some meetings will have board members, others may not in the fall, and vice versa. Just recognizing the challenge of scheduling what is about 30 meetings. No, 60 meetings based on what we just talked about.
Yeah, so I think that this will be also just like really important to extend to the full board. And I also don't know, you know, when we were doing the cell phone meetings, we kept a single document where we took notes so that people that couldn't get there could read about what happened. And I'd love to see us do something similar here. because, 60 meetings is a lot. Plus, on top of our other meetings, I think it's just unrealistic to have a board member at each of them, but we can try for as many as possible.
Yeah, I think we could leverage AI actually to both take notes as well as provide some summaries.
Great. Dr. Valenzuela?
I want to also check in with you in terms of your availability. We have been meeting with parents this summer during the day, and we have been finding that we have had good attendance at 10 o'clock. So we are catching folks who are, got their sleep and their second shift work, and just, getting ready for their shift. So, and the attendance is good. So I was just wondering if you're open as well for a 10 o'clock meeting, 10 to 11, 11 or 11 to 12 meeting time in the morning.
Yes, I could make that work. Usually I just need like at least 3 to 4 weeks runway so that I can block that off on my work calendar. But I think that would be great.
Thank you.
All right. And just a sense, I know Kate has been out a little bit. So do you know when these will start to populate on our calendars? I don't know who that question is for right now.
Yep, I'll take that question.
Okay.
I think they will populate over the next 2 weeks.
Awesome.
And so at next committee meeting, we should be able to see the full schedule and where we really have gaps.
Beautiful. That sounds great to me. Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide. The parent engagement and the student engagement. Committee members, what questions or feedback do you have on this? The only thing that I was, I think it takes a decent lift to know when the PTO meetings are at each school. And so I'm just not sure, like, how have we thought about how we're gonna manage that and then get the board there? What are the internal workings for that?
So 2 or probably 3 things on that. First, Andy has worked with trying to organize all of the PTOs. And so we'll be using her to just do outreach to understand. The second is I always listed board members as first on attendees, but I don't think it's necessary that board members are there at all of them. But it's an opportunity to go to a PTO meeting for 15 to 30 minutes. So not to be the whole agenda, but to briefly talk. And third is this will take a little bit longer to get, but I actually get a fair number of emails from PTOs asking to join. And so I think it'll take a little bit of time to schedule some of the more developing PTOs than anything else. Grace, you came off mute. Anything you want to add there?
Yes, I was just going to say that the interesting thing about the PTOs is that usually there's a shift in leadership every year. So at this time, we should have a new list of people who are part of their board. And then the decisions are made around their best times the monthly meetings that they typically have. And we ask for those. We ask for the list, and we ask for the meeting dates and times for the PTOs. And as Dr. Scallon said, it really depends on how established PTO is in terms of how they organize their structure for meetings.
Excellent. Board Member Sautel, go ahead.
Hi, the student engagement meetings, did that happen last year? And was it like an evening thing or something, or?
So each school for middle and high school identified representative students that then met with a couple of board members. I think the most was 3 board members and myself. And so it was not open to everybody, but principals identified students. And I think it varied, where some cases they were representatives of all of the different student groups. I think that was probably like the most organized, to where it was who's in the hall at this moment is kind of how it felt. And so you got very different perspectives.
And I'm assuming the student representatives to the school board have an active role in that.
It varied. So 2 of the student board members participated in their school and their other colleague's school. And then in the other case, not as much.
Yeah, I do think like if there is anything that we could do to try to make sure that we're getting a cross section of students in those rooms, I think that that could just be really helpful. Like, and obviously like inviting the leaders of the organization or the student organizations is helpful, but also like students that may not be as engaged as those, I think would be really helpful to, I know it will be a challenge maybe to get them in the room. And I do think like, I wonder if you'd be interested in perhaps doing like high school in the fall and middle school in the spring. Like I do think that I learned a ton from our middle schoolers, and would like to keep them in the loop somehow. I don't know if that's the solution, but I think I would still like to be able to meet with middle schoolers if possible.
I don't know if that was a question directed at me, but certainly, like I'm
Yeah.
open to whatever on this. This was a little bit to Grace's question earlier about the during the day meeting, which I think is this slide in particular, where those 2 community partners, that could be really great to leverage as well here. There was a harder time getting board participation in the student meetings, I think just because of the schedule. And so I don't know your preference on 3 like targeted dense meetings versus more diffuse and only 1 or 2 board members. So that's what I was trying to figure out. So we're open to anything on this.
Yeah, what do other committee members think about that? Kind of like the scheduling of student meetings. What are folks' availability to come during the day? Do you have thoughts on high school versus middle school or both?
I think it would be really interesting to try to follow up with the middle school students that were present in last year's meetings for this coming year, to see if their perspective has changed. Maybe they could be mentors to like 8th graders mentoring 6th graders or whatever. I think that would be really interesting. And I would be all over that, trying to get to those meetings, because, I'm retired.
Yes, daytime flexibility. Yeah, board member Noor, board member Ali, I don't know if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share.
I unfortunately don't have as much daytime flexibility, so the middle school was hard to get to last time around. But I do like that the high school ones are closer to the evening when I'm available. So if we could, I know it's hard to get middle schoolers at the end of the day, but if that was possible, I'd love to see if we could do that.
Super helpful. And board member Ali?
Yeah, I mean, during the day I am kind of busy, but I could manage. I could figure out how to move things around.
Yeah, and again, I just need a runway of 3 to 4 weeks. That's usually about how far out I'm scheduling. So if I can, put it into my schedule, then I can get there during the day for sure.
What do we think about asking our student reps to perhaps schedule and facilitate, and then work with them to identify a sister middle school or a brother middle school kind of piece to then coordinate as well with?
I think that would be awesome. And I think they would be super eager to be able to do that.
Okay. I will follow up with Dr. Opperman, who sort of serves as their point person on that. Oops, sorry about that.
No, that's great. I think you can go ahead unless there's anything else about the student engagement. Perfect. Was there this? Can we go back to staff? Oh, other way.
Oh, I know. Man.
You don't need me to micromanage you. And
Staff
oh,
we already discussed.
we already did. Okay, sorry, I just got confused.
I know, that's why I was like, I accidentally clicked backwards and then I couldn't figure out how to click backwards.
Yeah,
We can't
it's
have committee meetings in the classroom anymore.
That's all right. Okay, so and then there's just these that will be scheduled as they come up. Is there, I just had like one thought, and I'd love to know what other committee members feel about this. Like, if things are on my calendar, it just like helps me, like knowing when the parent universities are, as opposed to reading them in the newsletter and then having to put them on the calendar to get there. Like, I just wonder from other folks, like, what level of district events is it helpful to have on your calendar? And we could also talk about this at the board retreat too, but I'd be interested in having some of these other things land on my calendar so that I know when they're happening.
Add on to that, if not on the calendar, if we could have a separate document with everything on it so that we could just go to that. If that's easier, that would be great too.
Grace, you were going to comment on Parent U, I think.
Yeah, I lost it.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you are interested in also knowing not every curriculum night or at the school, but there are some good events that are really community oriented, like there are multicultural potluck, community dinners like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm starting to have started meeting with principals around this, and they want help with that to do those events at their school, because it's popular with community. They have hundreds of people that show up
Yeah.
for that. So it's an opportunity to connect with parents on a more informal basis, without any big topic. So I can also include that in your board update.
That would be really, really wonderful. I know some building leaders are, into the practice of letting board members know when things are coming up. But if it was in that board update, that would be awesome, because I'd love to go to math night and all those things just for a few minutes to see like more things in action, which is great.
Can I?
So maybe, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so it seems like maybe that is the way that it could be more incorporated, is through the board updates as opposed to additional calendar invites.
My gut is yes. And I'm thinking back to the last board meeting where there were questions about what's on the board calendar or the district calendar. And I know that the more calendars we try to manage, the harder it gets, right? Because if you're trying to keep track of something in 4 different places, you're just going to lose something. And if you put everything onto the board calendar, you lose for the community purpose when the board is and when the committees are and when the board's community engagement is. And so, Grace, perhaps you could work up sort of a recommended structure of what goes into board calendar on the website, what goes into some other tracker so that things aren't in multiple places. And then, Chair, perhaps we could discuss that either at the next committee meeting or at the board retreat.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense to do at the board retreat and get everybody's input. But yeah, I think that would be great.
Great. And so, Grace, just so you have it, I think the board retreat is
21st.
21st of September.
Is that all
Awesome.
day?
It's a 4-hour chunk in the afternoon, I believe.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Got it.
And then just so that council member or board members know, I do not believe the city council district meetings have been scheduled yet. I did ask that they hold and not use the days we have meetings or that we have community engagement, and they've agreed to that. And so when we have those dates, I will share it with you.
Great. That sounds good. Okay, well, I think that all sounds really great, and I think we can probably move on to looking at these policies if folks don't have any other questions. Okay, seeing no questions. So there are 6 different policies, and Superintendent, would you mind just talking about how these policies ended up as the ones that you flagged for this committee to review?
Yes. So actually, it's funny because I used the same template that I used for finance. And so you see where it's recommended for review.
Okay, yeah.
But none of them I actually starred as particularly urgent. There's some that go really far back, right? Like Speaker Series 1992, that the committee may just want to review, even if it's not to revise, just to update it. And so there were no specific ones that I was recommending that the committee dig into. For finance personnel, for example, we did make some recommendations where our policy is out of date. And these 6 were identified because as I went through the policies, these were the ones that seemed to be particularly aligned to either public engagement, community engagement, or around legislative pieces or tangential to legislative pieces, potentially.
Beautiful. And committee members, did everybody have a chance to look through those policies before this? No? Okay, that's fine. So Superintendent, would you be able to share, we'll just, most of them are pretty short, so I think we can just look through them together here. So this is BBA, powers and authority of the board. Appreciate that. So that is, yeah, just language that we see in a lot of other places. It does, one of the changes that or one of the things that you'll see in older policies is that the board is referred to as the committee. We just have a practice of updating those as we open up policies to change committee to board, but it looks like this one has already been updated. Is there anybody that would like to review this more deeply? And board member Fatuma Noor and Ali, if there, I can't see your faces, so if there is something that you want to change about these or open up, please let me know, but verbally.
And Chair Lentz, the only thing that comes to my mind about why to potentially revisit this is if the board as a body is going to be more active in Augusta, that I don't know that it's necessary to add anything here, but we may just want to think about what our practice is, about how we identify bills that we may
Yeah.
speak on, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to think about for sure. Let's do policy BJ. This just talks about it existing within federal laws. Yeah, this one could just update the committee language to board. I am wondering, because I know that within this series of 6 that you've flagged, like several of them do have the old language. So I wonder if we could just pass those over to policy with the updated, if there's no content changes, but just the language changes, that, they could get through in like a package deal, as opposed to having to open up every policy to review for content changes as well. Any other thoughts on this policy from folks? Okay. So that would be my only suggested change, would be to change the language on that one. Policy KB. This is a longer policy. So I would just, I don't think we'll have time for folks to read it here, but the language in this was, that did come from Portland Empowered, and I think 2017, something like that. And so it does feel very in alignment with a lot of our other materials and things. So I don't think that it needs any changes right now. Portland Empowered is going through some leadership transitions. And so I do think that maybe after they settle again, it might be like next year, we could look at this to see if there are any other substantial updates to be made. Any other thoughts from folks on that one? Okay, next up. Yeah, we can go next up. Public engagement. I think that this might be one that would be interesting to just look at as a committee, especially as we more formalize what our community engagement looks like. So I think that flagging this for some, doesn't mean that we have to make any changes, but just flagging it for a longer amount of time, I think makes sense. I see you reading very quickly, Board Member Sawtelle and Board Member Noor. And again, like if anything comes up to you after this meeting, we can certainly roll it into the next meeting, or just email me with your thoughts. This is a very short one. This is again, I think another one that we just need to update the language for. And Superintendent Scallon, I don't know, or Dr. Valenzuela, I don't know if either of you have the background on this, but I think it's interesting that we have like a school community policy and a school family policy. And I wasn't sure if they both have to exist or if they could be blended into one. I don't know kind of like the state statute around that, but.
So I think it really has to do with focus. So I think of this last one as being similar to the one that talks about board members speaking for themselves, not for the whole. I think this gets at the same idea.
Got it.
I'm not sure why we need both of those, because the first paragraph here talks about professional staff, but then it shifts to school committee.
Yeah.
And the other one is particular to school committee. So it seems like if anything, the language here should adjust to being professional staff throughout.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like it's super burning to adjust that right now, but I would look to the committee to see.
I mean, I don't really see a reason, or at least the last one, to adjust it. I actually do like what it says, speaking on behalf of yourself and not the school board. Because I tend to say things. I don't want y'all to be responsible for it.
Yes. Okay, so then perhaps this could just go in the bucket of updating the committee to board and leaving it as is for this year. And then visitors to the schools. My only thought around this was just, and I think it does reference law enforcement. The other policy about law enforcement, does it? No. So I think that this is worth looking at to see if there's anywhere that we need to put explicitly around law enforcement, non-law enforcement professionals, kind of things like that. I think that it would be good to call those things out here. Any other thoughts on that last one from folks? So it seems like we have three different buckets. We have one doesn't make sense to, do any changes at all. Then we have a second bucket that's like changing where it references school committee to school board and updating the language of the policy, but not the content. And then it sounds like we flagged potentially two policies to look at more in depth as a committee to potentially make recommendations to the policy committee. And so Superintendent Scallon, I guess we can circle back and just figure out where it makes sense to plug that into the calendar. And the way it would work would be that we would, come up with recommendations, and then that would go over to the policy committee and they would run their process with it. So we wouldn't send our recommendations directly to the board. We'd send them to the policy committee, who then would make recommendations to the board. Very convoluted, but it's the way that it works. So we'll figure out where that goes in the, Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Sorry, Dr. Scallon, can you scroll up on this so I can, or scroll down? Sorry. I was curious about the unauthorized visitors bit. Thank you.
I'll let you finish reading that, Board Member Sawtelle.
Yeah, I'd be interested in, again, tightening that up. As far as, it seems like it's left to the building administration to decide kind of how things are handled, and that concerns me.
Yeah, I think that we're just in a different world than the last time this was updated. So I agree with you, and having it directly reference other policies that are specific about specific groups of people makes sense to me. Yeah. And this, of all of them, I feel like is probably the most urgent of the policy updates.
Yeah. Yeah. What year was this written?
Let's see. We got
21.
2021 was the last time it was updated.
Okay.
I mean, just for Portland High alone, some of that is because there's the public health center in the basement. So like,
Yeah.
that, I think stuff like that needs to at least be thought about in updating that policy.
Yeah. Great. So then I think that makes sense to get these into the schedule as we move forward. And then I did want to just circle back on the legislative tracker, which is, so basically what happens at the end of a legislative session is some bills get what's called carried over to the next session, and committees can like tag a bill so that basically it gets picked up again at the next session. And I'm just trying to look at different sources to get a full picture of what bills have been carried over and what bills might be coming up, but it's they're like MSMA keeps a bill tracker, the MEA keeps a bill tracker, and there are other, like the Maine Immigrants' Rights, they do advocacy and bill tracking. So I'm trying to just create like a collective list that wouldn't just be necessarily straight education pieces. It would be a bill tracker that it was inclusive of issues that would affect our district overall. And that's just taking more time than I had between the last meeting and this one. But all of my out of office things are over, so I should be able to dedicate that to get it at the next board meeting. And so we can start looking through what it looks like and how we can use it. And then the second piece, and I think I mentioned this at the top of the meeting, is just coordinating with Robbie at MSMA to hopefully get him or one of his recommendations to come and just teach us the basics of the legislature, and at which points, it's we would have the most impact. And the Maine State website is like a whole beast to learn how to use and find and track bills, and it's kind of like another language, but once you unlock it, like it's pretty easy to use, but it does take some effort and learning to understand how to get in there. So I think, does anybody on the committee or any of our staff have anything else that they wanted to make sure that we got to tonight? Then, then I think that I would be making a movement to adjourn. Is there a second? Thank you, Board Member Noor. All those in favor? So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us at 8:31 p.m.